Hey, Marina, how are you?
Thanks for joining me. There seems to be a lot of confusion about the assumable loan listings, and there's 64 of them on the market today that are
Wow.
not under contract. So let's clear up some of the confusion about how this process works for
Okay,
buyers.
let's do that. Yeah, for sure. But hold on. 64 listings right now that say they have a VA assumable loan on them.
Yes.
Wow.
Let
Wow,
me,
there's a lot to talk about then, because there's a lot of people who need to know about the VA assumable loans.
yes, so they can take advantage of it. It's a
Absolutely.
pretty cool opportunity if you wanted to just search through those listings alone and see what you can get. So basically, an assumable loan means that you're taking over the seller's existing loan on the house that has a lower interest rate from a couple of years ago versus
Right.
today's interest rate. Do
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, so back then, most of these assumable loans are like in the twos and the threes, right? Percents.
Yeah,
Today, for a VA loan, it's about six and a quarter, 6.16, about 6.25 or so
for a VA,
today for a VA loan. Yes.
and other
30-year fixed
higher,
VA.
right?
Well, so for conventional loans, it's at least 1% higher. It's in the 7.25 and up range for
Yeah.
conventional. Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to be a veteran to assume these VA
Right.
loans.
Yes, and that's really important to know. A lot of people don't know that is that a civilian can also assume a VA loan. It's totally doable, and people do it all the time. Of course, the caveat to that is that the seller who's got the veteran seller, his VA loan entitlement stays with that home if the civilian takes over.
Mhm.
Right? So he can't take that entitlement to his next property. But that's okay. That's a whole nother subject where we can talk about. Yes, you can have more than one VA loan at a time,
But
but
that's
we'll
a good
stick.
thing to bring up that you
Yeah.
don't necessarily need to be a veteran to assume a VA loan.
Yeah.
But if you are, you have a little bit of an advantage because if you're assuming that loan, you can take it off of the seller's, how do I say that?
Yeah,
You're gonna,
right.
you can
So
free them
if
up.
it's yeah, so if it's a veteran to veteran assumption, then the just like a normal VA loan, the buyer's VA entitlement would be used to buy for the loan on the home, and then the seller's VA entitlement would be cleared up, restored.
So that's
So
an
just like a normal
for
transaction.
the
Yep,
offer. It makes it a little bit stronger if it's coming
it
from someone
does.
who can assume
Yeah.
the entitlement.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like the the seller, you just don't know what their circumstances are. It could be like, okay,
I not
I
care.
only want a vet, right? I only want a veteran to assume my loan because I need my entitlement. I need my entitlement refilled or restored. But
Mhm.
other sellers might be like, you know what? I don't even care. I don't need it.
Just
You
want
know,
to see.
I'm yeah, I've got enough entitlement left over. I can buy another place in Tennessee or wherever they're moving to, right?
Mhm.
So just because you're not a veteran, I wouldn't I wouldn't let that stop me from
Yeah.
pursuing that as a buyer.
Yes. And each property is different. Some of them will say right there on the listing that it's for VA approved buyers only that can assume it
Good.
because they
Good.
know they want that. So, okay,
They
cool.
need that. They need their entitlement restored, right?
So
Got
let's
it. Got
start
it.
with the process. Let's say someone finds a house they like and it has an
Mhm.
assumable loan. What's the first step they got to do?
That's a great question. So here's what a lot of people don't know, and they need to know that whoever the seller's lender is, whoever the seller is making their monthly payment to, we'll call them the loan servicer. That company, that loan servicer is the only one that can say yes or no to the assumption. And they do all the pre-approvals, everything is done through that loan servicer. There's no outside mortgage broker like myself. Like I can't be involved. But I'm happy to give the information, absolutely, because as a fellow veteran, I want veterans to get the homes they want and deserve. Whether I can be involved or not, I'm going to help them out.
Awesome. So
So,
it's very different than any other house hunting process where you start with your lender.
right,
In this
right.
case,
It's very
you
difficult.
start
I
with your
mean,
realtor.
very different,
Yeah.
very different. It's a little bit of a more time consuming, but
Mhm.
the process would be the seller would contact their loan servicer and ask for a assumption packet.
Okay.
It's like a packet of information, and they'll send it to them by snail mail.
Mm.
So it's not electronic.
Oh,
That's
wow.
issue number one, right? So it's
Mhm.
going to come to them in the mail, and then from there they have to give it to the buyer, and the buyer has to fill out everything, and then they have to. From there, the loan servicer takes over. Um, but it has to be initiated by the seller. The loan servicer won't talk to me. They won't talk to you as an agent, even if you're representing the seller or the buyer. That the loan servicer will not communicate with you,
Okay.
only with the person who holds the loan, which would be
Okay.
the seller. So there has to be great communication between the both parties. Both,
Absolutely.
yeah, it has to be seamless.
And even though they won't communicate with the buyer or the seller's realtor, the buyer still needs the realtor to kind of start the initial contact, because I do like,
Yeah,
if it were me, I would have to go to the seller's agent and request their lender's info. So you still are working with your realtor in a way that your realtor is going to help facilitate the connection there. And
yeah,
I can see how it does add a few more steps, because then if it doesn't necessarily work with that first property you looked at, then you got to start that process all over again on the next one if you find another one that you like.
yes,
But it's kind of worth it. I mean, it's super worth it. You can save so much
yeah,
money on
yeah.
the interest rate, less than half of what it would be if you were to get a new one today. And
Yes, absolutely.
mortgage payment.
Yep, cut it in half. So I have a situation recent. I had a situation recently where the there was two offers. My buyers that were not going with an assumable loan, and a veteran who's going with an assumable loan, who they want to assume the loan. And
Mhm.
so the seller ultimately chose my buyer because they didn't want they didn't want they were in a hurry. They
Mm,
wanted a 30-day close instead of a multiple months closing. So
mm.
that's another part to it, Marina, is that it's going to take time. It's going to take 60 days at best, up to 3 or 4 months for that assumption to be completed.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Depends on the loan servicer. I've heard different stories. Of course, this is all anecdotal because, like I was saying, like we can't be involved in the assumption. It's only the servicer. But I get this question so often, and I ask this question to real estate agents all the time. When they say, yeah, I just closed a loan with a VA assumable, the first thing I do is say, how long did it take? Who was the servicer? And I
Mhm.
had them. The lowest I've seen, the shortest time I've seen so far is 60 days.
Okay.
So that's been the shortest. And so, of course, with Google and the internet and AI, we're always searching stuff and trying to find answers, right? So what the guideline says is that the loan servicer has 45 days to make a decision after they get the full packet of information from the person assuming the loan.
Oh,
45 days. So that to me that means, oh, so that means it's going to take 60 days. But the problem is they it's not as fluid as it is if it was like me and it was a regular loan. Like I'm gonna say, hey, I need this. Hey, we need this. Hey, we need this. Quick, give us this information. We need your pay stub. We need your bank statement. But the loan servicer, they're in no hurry, right? So they may be piecemealing that. So it could take 60 days before they even get the information they need to start that 45-day clock.
because they've already got the loan.
Yes.
It's not really a high priority.
It's not a high priority for the servicer because first of all, let's say the rate is 2.5%, right? The loan servicer is not making much money for their company
Mhm.
based on a 2% rate, whereas or 2.5%. Whereas, they could just let it go and let another person assume it and just continue on, or they could and that doesn't really matter. It's like neither here nor there for these companies that are, making hundreds of millions of dollars a month, these big companies, right? In loan servicing, they don't care about a 2.25 rate or a 2.5% rate. If it
Totally.
goes off their books, that's fine. So there's no
Yeah.
big rush to get it done.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to dissuade, believe me,
Oh, it's just
get
good to be aware.
absolutely, because assuming a VA loan is a tremendous opportunity to save money. It's
Yeah.
tremendous.
Huge.
So
You got to
it
plan
really
ahead for
is.
this. You got to plan ahead.
Yep. You got to have
Start the
patience.
process earlier than maybe you would have.
Yes.
Um,
Everybody, all parties need to be super patient. Like I, I know it may not be the right way to phrase it, but I always say you got to have your big boy patience when you do something like this. You
okay.
got to be super patient and ready. It's like, it's going to take, it's a process. But what I was going to say is that the underwriters, the ones who get it all on the loan servicer side, there's just not enough of them dedicated to the assumption department. So they
Mm,
have to take resources that they have doing regular loans that aren't being assumed, VA, conventional and otherwise, and move them over to help out with the assumption side.
which
And
is not new
so,
for them. So
no,
kind of more of a,
no, I mean, it's backing them up so that it's gonna take time.
yeah, it's interesting. I still like the pursuit of it because if you have the time and you're not in a rush to move and you want, it's like the Easter egg hunt and getting a prize. It
Yes,
if you have the time to do that, I don't know. I find it exciting and an exciting opportunity to try and go after.
absolutely. And because it's the golden egg at the end, right?
Yeah.
Heck
Okay.
yeah.
The second issue that you have to tackle with this is that loan you're assuming is not going to cover the full purchase price. They've paid it down probably a little bit, unless you can find one where they've not, which could be in your favor. But there's, the first one I just looked at today, there's a $200,000 difference. So
Okay.
you have to come in with cash, or is it worth getting a second loan? And can you get a second loan?
Right. So those are really great points, and those are kind of the sticking points right now. So let's tackle the first one. So we call it gap. We call it the gap funds. So in the scenario that you just expressed, so maybe the purchase price is like 600,000, but they owe 400,000 on the loan. So there's a $200,000 difference. So the seller needs that. That's the equity that they earn, right? So how are they going to get it?
Yeah.
So if someone is assuming a VA loan and they have money saved up for that, they've got a head start over someone who doesn't.
Mhm.
Because now you have to limit it to somebody who doesn't have enough money. There's not much gap funds in there. They can I've seen them like 50K. I've seen them 100K gap. That's not too bad in the big picture where 200K is getting up there, right? I have clients that assumed a VA loan. I mean, I didn't help them with it, obviously, because I can't, but they had $350,000 saved up. So they covered that gap fund and
Perfect.
they took care of it themselves.
Yeah.
So now the question is, can you finance that gap with a
Yes.
second mortgage? So up until about a month ago, the answer was depends on, well, the answer still is it depends on the loan servicer. They get to decide whether or not they're going to take a second mortgage to cover that gap. And it would have to be sub, it'd have to be in second position. That's a
Okay.
whole nother story. That's easy.
Mhm.
Some will do it, some won't. And if they do, now you have to find a lender who will do that kind of loan. And I found one that will do it. I don't have all the details because I'll just send the client there for that second loan. And from what I understand, it's also not the easiest thing to do because now you have another lender working on the gap funds with the current servicer working on the assumable side. And then you've got the buyer and you've got the seller and you've got all parties involved. And it's it can get messy.
Yes. Yes.
But it's doable.
Yes, it's doable, but yes. And rewind it adds another, you don't know if that house that you are falling in love with and want to put an offer on, if their lender is going to even allow it. So that's something you have to find out at the beginning as well.
Yeah, at the beginning. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you know, really, really strong real estate agents like yourself, Marina, you will educate them, right? So if we can get buyers agents and listing agents to educate their clients on how this process works and the amount of patience it's going to take, and just, you know, be prepared for hurdles that you're going to have to overcome.
Yeah.
Just be prepared. As long as it's not a big surprise, in my experience, things go a lot smoother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Educate.
So interesting.
Educate.
I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people, because at first it just seems like, oh, amazing. This is, you know, but it's work too.
Work.
But
You got to want it. And at 2.25 or 2.5% interest rate instead of, you know, 6.5,
it can be
that's
very hard work.
totally worth it.
Pay off in the end, big time.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
think it's worth having the two mortgages though. Let's say you've got that lower payment on the assumed mortgage,
Mhm.
plus the payment on the extra 200,000 with
Right.
regular interest rate.
Right.
Is it still worth it?
It usually is, especially if the gap funds, the smaller loan is actually like, you know, like 200,000 or 100,000, then that payment is going to be really small. Right. And you can pay that one off earlier too. So it's worth it. And I was going to say the loan servicer could help you figure that out, but they probably won't. It will be, to help you figure it out would be the lender that's giving you the gap loan. That lender can help you figure out if it makes sense or not. And usually it does.
Can someone with a HELOC use that to pay the difference?
Oh yeah, absolutely. HELOCs are a great strategy.
Okay.
So if someone has a HELOC that they can tap into from another property, they can absolutely take that off and use it as take money out of that HELOC and use it as a down payment.
Cool.
Absolutely. So one of the main reasons people get HELOCs, in my world anyway, some people get HELOCs to pay off debt, and that's totally fine. So a HELOC, just so the audience knows, is a home equity line of credit. So it's basically a loan that you take out against you're pulling equity out of your home in the form of cash. It's just sitting there. You use it as you need it. A lot of people use that to pay down their debt or pay off debt completely.
As the interest rate's so much smaller.
Yes. You figure it's 7%, whereas your credit cards are 26%, your car is like 15%, you know, and you look at all those and okay, that's like $1,200 a month together. But if I take out 60K out of this HELOC, now my payment is $600 a month and everything's paid off. That's one strategy. But what most of my clients use, that they use the HELOC when they're investing in another property. So they'll have equity in their home. They'll take out a HELOC, $200,000 HELOC, and they don't touch it until they find a property that they want to buy, and then they pull it out and use it for that property. You can do that here too with an assumable loan.
So that might help the process a little. Be a little
Yes.
easier than getting a second loan.
Yeah, then you won't have to worry about that second loan issue.
But that won't work for first-time home buyers.
Won't work for first-time home buyers because they won't have a HELOC, right?
Yeah.
But you just have, okay, there's another thing I want to mention. So when you're assuming a loan, a VA loan, and you're going to get a second loan, so you have to be approved using both of those debts. So there's debt to income ratios, right? And again, only the loan servicer can determine, you know, how they're going to do this. But the second loan payment and the assumable loan payment are both counted towards the debt to income ratio.
Okay. Good stuff.
All right.
Yeah. Let me check my questions real quick and make sure we got them all.
I like your fish.
Thank you. I think that was it. Was the seller giving up their ability to use the VA loan? We covered that.
Oh, can I back up on that?
Sure.
There's another piece to that. And I think it's called a release of liability. Pretty sure that's what it's called. So basically, to protect the seller, our veteran seller, if it's a non-veteran assuming the loan, so a non-veteran assumes the loan, so that the seller's VA entitlement stays with that property.
Mhm.
And if for some reason the new buyer, the new owner defaults, misses payments, or gets foreclosed on, the veteran is going to be responsible for that also.
Really?
And we don't want that for our veterans, right? So make sure that listing agents know this, that your seller needs to get a release of liability signed. I'm pretty sure it's called a release of liability. And basically exactly what it says. Like if this thing goes bad, I, the veteran, am not responsible. It's the new owner's responsibility. That's fair, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But super important. A lot of people don't know that. They
Just-
have to get that release of liability.
Okay. Do they ever say no to that? Or is it just something you got to ask for and then you get it? Do you know? Not sure.
I really don't know, but I don't see how they could say no. I mean, look, so let's say, so I'm a veteran. Let's say I have a VA loan on my home and somebody wants to assume it. They're not a veteran. I bet, okay, I'll sell it to you and you can assume my loan, but you got to sign this release of liability so that if you don't make your payment, it doesn't affect me because I no longer own this home or the mortgage. That's common. I think no one would say no to that, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there's always some, right?
So it's just, it's the new buyer that just needs to sign.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. It's a lot of information.
Well,
And
if the idea of assuming a VA loan listing scares you and you don't want to do it, you get your own loan, contact John.
yes. We can get it done very quickly.
But if it does excite you and you want to see what these 64 listings are that are at the time of this recording available on the island of Oahu, I have a website that has an easy way to access those specific listings all in one place. And I will put that website on the screen. This is going to be super helpful because there's already a lot of interest in these listings, but a lot of confusion at the same time. So thanks so much for taking the time to go over this with me today.
Absolutely. Anytime. And if anybody has any questions, even though I can't be involved, I can always answer questions in the general sense like I just did right now. So just reach out to me.
Yeah. And then, if you end up hitting too many walls trying to get it and you want to just open up your own, then there you go. You've got it in your back pocket.
Yeah.
Right
If you want to go the traditional route, I'm here for you.
Right. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Marina. This was fun.
That's great.